ultimately, debt settlement is something you can do if you find yourself in a situation where it is now beyond your ability to repay. You now have so much freaking debt that you can't even keep up with the minimum payments. I'm joined on the line by Richard Cooper, who's president and CEO of Total Debt Freedom. I see you got my call out, Richard.
I saw your tweet. Thanks, love. We've connected.
Yes, we did. So,
How are you?
I'm good. I saw your the story you just penned about the fact that you were appalled and aghast at the fact that there are credit counselors out there that are offering debt settlement companies. Your industry is under a fair amount of pressure right now from a whole bunch of fronts.
Yeah, there's a ton of pressure coming from creditors and from credit counselors. There's this bill that the Liberals are looking at right now called Bill 55, which could potentially change a whole bunch of stuff for consumers when it comes to settling debt.
Mm-hmm.
There's a few problems with it. We've made some recommendations, but I think the biggest thing that could come out of it, if they go and adopt the same policies that some of the other provinces have put into place, like Alberta, for example, and Manitoba. We just got licensed in Alberta, and we're just, getting our feet wet to see how the model works over there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not that good. It actually encourages debt settlement companies to get really lousy settlements for consumers.
Mm-hmm.
The only way you can
it's
pay
like
your bills
they're
and cover
protecting
the
the
costs.
lenders.
Pardon me?
It's like they are protecting the lenders.
Well, it turns a debt settlement company into a nice credit counseling collection agency sort of firm. Yeah, it's protecting the bank's profits, the creditor's profits, at the expense of keeping the debtor in debt longer.
Yeah. Well, who would be surprised at that? I mean, if you live in a conservative community and you believe that profit comes before people, then what you want to do is protect the big institutions and make sure the little guy gets screwed.
Well, my dad always said, love people, not money.
Yes,
you
I
have to
totally
make sure
agree.
you do it the right way.
Yeah. Okay, so then you decide that what you're going to do is you're going to write a book to try and teach people, because a lot of people don't understand what debt settlement is.
Yeah, debt settlement is a process of negotiating between, for a company, between a creditor and a debtor. And the debt settlement company gets paid exclusively by the person in debt. So we have their best interests at heart.
Right.
We do that very effectively. We usually get settlements around 40 cents on the dollar for most people. They get out of debt in 3 years for less, and they save a ton of money, and it does way less damage for the credit. So everything's great, tickety-boo, life goes on. I've had writing this book on my bucket list for a while now. It's been sitting there for about 5 or 6 years, and I've finally had the time to do it. And there's just an element of people out there that are do-it-yourselfers, and I've seen so many people try to settle their debt themselves, and they've just turned it into a fiery train wreck. It's not an easy thing to do. People make it sound like it's a cakewalk, it's a piece of cake, a chimpanzee can do it, but it's quite difficult.
Okay. What
really
makes it so hard?
Doing.
What makes it so hard?
Because bill collectors like to dupe people. They tend to promise you something and then you
go
don't
back
get
on
it.
their word, Richard? No.
Well,
Our good financial institutions? Not a chance.
Just make this payment and we'll call it a day. And, I've seen so many people that have said, well, I made the payment like you said, and I got a call from another collection agency 6 months later saying I owe the balance. What happened?
Yeah.
Because
you have to get it in writing.
Sideways for people.
Yeah, you have to get it in writing. I'm not
Always
sure.
Get it in writing.
I'm not sure why people are so naive about this. I mean, this rule has been around for frickin' ever. Get it in writing. You do nothing until you get it in writing.
Yeah, and there's tons of resources in that book beyond just getting in writing, like negotiation techniques. When's the best time of the month to go and talk to your creditors and work out the best deal?
Right.
Points of leverage. What do you do when you're at an impasse trying to negotiate? Like there's stuff in this book that even my nearest competitors don't even know about.
Really?
Yeah.
Isn't that kind of like spilling all the beans, Richard?
I put the secret sauce in this book. This has everything that you need to know to go and settle your own debt.
Okay. And you're counting on the fact that most people are too lazy or too shy to do it for themselves, so they'll come back to you anyway.
They might.
Yep. Because the reality is that what I find is a lot of people don't have the chutzpah to do this. It takes a certain amount of balls to do this.
Let's be honest. I mean, I'm not a mechanic. I could go and change the transmission on my car if I had enough tools, resources, and training. Sure, we could all do everything we wanted to ourselves. But there's a lot of people that just want to tackle this themselves. So this is a tool for those folks that want to do it on their own.
Okay, so why not credit counseling? Why not go the credit counseling route?
The problem that See, the thing that I struggle with credit counseling is when it first started, and I just learned this a few days ago, it was a nonprofit organization that was funded mostly by the government. So the government was paying for these credit counselors to work out deals for them. Mm-hmm. Now, that's changed over time. The government no longer funds it. Now, about two-thirds of their revenue, if not more, comes from financial institutions. So banks are actually paying the credit counselors to work out payment arrangements for the debtor.
Mm-hmm. Well,
How
actually,
does that look after the debtor?
It's actually making credit arrangements so that they get most of their principal back. That's what they're after.
Well, it runs for 5 years. It costs more than debt settlement, and it does more damage because it runs for so long.
Yeah, because what a lot of people don't realize is that it doesn't start coming off your record until, is it 3 years after you're finished your payment settlement?
Well, with debt settlement?
Mm-hmm. No,
well,
with credit counseling.
Oh, with credit counseling, I can't say for sure. I mean, I'm not in that business, but I know that the longer that you're engaged into a debt repayment plan, the more damage it's going to do to your credit. I mean, the thing that's unique about debt settlement is you usually start settling off debt within about 6 to 8 months. So I've seen credit scores, and I've seen case studies now where I've put all this together, and I've got some of that in my book also, where I've seen credit scores go up about 100 to 120 points over the course of 1 year, starting the program and not even graduating, not even settling all the debt. So it's not something that we tend to, brag about to our clients when we explain how the program works, because we like to underpromise and overdeliver.
Right.
But generally speaking, it's not nearly as bad for your credit as what the media and credit counselors and everybody else has led the public to believe.
Now, part of the problem that people have with debt settlement is there are more than a few shady debt settlement companies that have given debt settlement as a whole a really bad name.
That's correct.
And there are people out there that promise consumers, they get their fees up front, and they promise consumers that they will do what they need to do, and then they sort of, it's almost like packing up your tent and disappearing into the night.
And I'll tell you where that came from. Back in 2008, we had a financial meltdown, a crisis, and all these mortgage agents that were issuing or, underwriting mortgages for lenders, for all these consumers, buy the big American dream and get them a big house before everything crashed, they lost their jobs. Mm-hmm. So guess what they went and did as soon as they lost their jobs as a mortgage agent? They got into the debt settlement business in 2008. Mm-hmm. And then they changed the rules in 2010 in the U.S. And then the folks that were stuck in the U.S. thinking, hey, I think I can settle debt. Why don't we go north? The pastures look green there, and we'll try to sell the same program. The problem is they didn't have a clue what they were selling. I used to do mystery shopper calls on them and ask them questions like, hey, Mr. Debt Settlement Company, I've got a house that's worth $500,000. My mortgage balance is about $100,000. I owe $50,000 credit card. Can the credit card company sue me? Oh, no, you'll be fine, they would tell me.
Yeah, which is ridiculous.
Come on.
Yeah.
That's how they got that bad press, because they were just enrolling so many people into the debt settlement program without even considering what the consequences might be. You have to be very, very selective when you look at settling your credit card debt.
Now, you make it sound like most of the bad guys are in the U.S., but we have a fair amount of homegrown idiots.
That's true. And I'm not saying all the bad guys are in the U.S. It's just that's where the trend happened. But yeah, there are companies in Canada that have overpromised results and haven't been able to deliver. I always encourage people to check the BBB rating. Search the company, look how long they've been in business. It's critical. I mean, if you're going to hand over your financials to a company to help you get out of credit card debt, yeah, there's bankruptcy trustees out there as well that can do good jobs. But debt settlement is highly effective if you select the right company.
Okay, so why debt settlement? Why not just go to a trustee and go through bankruptcy and be done with it?
If you're up to your eyeballs in debt and you have no assets, I mean, if you're sitting on $40,000, $50,000 of credit card debt and you've got $5,000 or $10,000 worth of assets, you've got nothing to lose, you're not a homeowner, I would encourage you to talk to a trustee. In fact, probably go there first before talking to a debt settlement company. The problem that I see with trustees today is they've just made this recent change to the rule in the last couple of years, and every single trustee that I've talked to likes to sell consumer proposals over bankruptcy.
I have never understood this. Like, I do not understand why you would choose to do a consumer proposal that locks you into a payment regardless of how your circumstances change, as opposed to going straight to bankruptcy.
Are you ready for this? They do it because they make more money for less work.
Okay, so as consumers, like, I'm going on record now as saying, cut out the consumer proposal nonsense, and if you go to a bankruptcy trustee, go bankrupt. Don't bother with the consumer proposal. You are not being holier than thou. You are not doing any great thing, because, people seem to feel that it's one up from bankruptcy. It's not as bad as going bankrupt. You've destroyed your credit history anyway. Go bankrupt and get out of it.
Well, if you think about it with a bankruptcy, I mean, you're done when you're discharged
Yeah.
year and a half later, right?
Yeah.
If you're in a consumer proposal, they usually run for 5 years. So
Yeah.
5 years runs by, your credit's taken a hit for 5 years, then you're discharged and you're clean.
Yeah.
So, I mean, a bankruptcy is a much cleaner, faster slate. It's a good program, but you want to make sure that you're up to your eyeballs in debt and you've tried everything you possibly can do.
Okay. Assuming you have assets, debt settlement's the way to go.
It really depends. I mean, if you're able to pay down a considerable more than your minimum payment, I mean, the plan that you preach on about, that you bang on this drum all the time about the jars and budget and save and just pay down the debt,
Yeah.
go do that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if you're able to pay down considerably more than your minimum monthly payment, get out of debt that way and do it that way.
Yeah.
If you're at this point where you're kind of between, your system and considering bankruptcy,
Yeah.
then I would definitely encourage anybody to look at settling their debt because it's fast, it saves you a ton of money, it does less damage to your credit bureau, it's flexible.
Most important, you have to choose a good company. So go check the Better Business Bureau before you decide who you're going to deal with. This is one of the places where you have to do some research because you don't know whether you are seeing the sheep or the wolf in sheep's clothing.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thanks for joining me tonight, sir.
Hey,
And
you're very
good
welcome.
luck with the book.
Lots of fun. Thanks.
Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.
So that was Richard Cooper. His book is called Enough is Enough, the Do-It-Yourself Debt Settlement Guide Your Creditors Don't Want You to Know About